I never really got the chance to play Little Nightmares, but I definitely remember watching a lot of other people play it. It scared the hell out of me, but there was something oddly just enthralling about it. The art style, the environments, the monsters, it was really well crafted. And so while I never really got the chance to play it, it definitely stuck in my mind. Now, if you have never heard of the game, there will be spoilers, and I recommend you play the game for yourself. Even though it's a little bit hypocritical of me considering I've never played the game myself. But for those of you too lazy to buy the game, even though it's only like $10, I will sum it up for you real quick. The first Little Nightmares game takes place in the Maw, this dystopian cruise ship that you don't really ever get to see from the outside, mainly just kind of wandering around from the inside as this little kid named Six trying to escape, I assume. The game is pretty vague with the story, and I've never really bothered to go hours and hours deep into it, so forgive me if I get some details wrong. Anyways, inside the Maw, there are these residents that are horrifyingly obese and just grab and eat anything they see, which comes into play in the game a lot. And I say residents because they look kind of human, but there's something off about them. Something off in like the design, the face, just how they act, the noises. They're very, very close to human, but I think that's one of the big aspects of this game that's just so creepy, is everything seems a little off. Besides the residents though, there are a lot more creepy things in there, like the janitor, this like hulking thing that just has these really, really absurdly long like noodle arms. There's this monster that swims around in this pit of shoes. It's so abstract, but the thing I really wanted to talk about first, the thing I've like settled on the most, the thing I've thought about the most, is the chefs. The chefs are the two chefs for the Maw that presumably cook all of the food. They spend most of their time in the kitchen, from what you can see in the entire game, and they're not on screen for a ton of the game. The time they are is incredibly off-putting considering the strange pig-like noises they make, and the fact that their face has a line around it, implying that they're just wearing a mask of something else. It's very strange and eerie crawling through the kitchen whilst hearing the chopping of meat and the pig-like squeals of this strange humanish thing. From when I first started watching this game, the chefs were both the most disturbing and intriguing characters in this game. The idea that there's just something completely different under that skin-like mask that you wouldn't have really noticed is just so intriguing to me, and I've always had, I don't want to say a special place in my heart because Jesus Christ, these things are horrifying, look at them, but at the same time I've always remembered them. They're the things that kind of stand out. Someone says, hey, remember Little Nightmares? I think of the chefs. Whatever it is, I'm not quite sure I'll ever be able to put my finger on it, but the chefs are by far my favorite character in Little Nightmares. However, if I did have to pick a second favorite, it would be the janitor is the first real monster you see in the game, and while it may not be my personal favorite, credit has to be given to it for the design. I mean, it is just very well done. The really absurdly long arms just compared to its legs and other bodily proportions. And the other big characteristic of it is that it's completely blind. There is no way for it to see you, as it has this just bandage around its eyes. It's very off-putting, and one of the things I've noticed looking through all these Little Nightmares characters is they all seem to have their signature noises. The chefs have these high-pitched pig-like, squeals, but the janitor has this almost raspy groan as if he's trying to breathe in but he can't, almost like he's suffocating or just struggling for air. But yeah, the janitor definitely has one of my favorite designs, even though he may not be my personal favorite. Also, on an unrelated side note, for this video I had to look through the 3D models of each character, and Jesus Christ, the janitor has the funniest T-posing model. Anyways, the janitor's design is a very well crafted piece of the Little Nightmares puzzle, and just works really well as the introduction to Little Nightmares' monsters and just kind of everything about it. It works very well. Every time I would watch a YouTuber play it, the first thing they would see is the janitor, and Jesus Christ, it scared the hell out of them, and it was very enjoyable to watch, but also I understand why. It's a very good introduction, done very well. The last character I'd like to talk about isn't some horribly disfigured monster or strange beast, it's the character you play as. Which might sound strange because I've mentioned that you play as a child named Six, but that child does some truly horrific things throughout the course of the game. In fact, I would say that child is the scariest thing in the game, doing things like chopping off the janitor's arms, and while you could argue that's out of self-defense as it's to escape the janitor, you cannot argue that later in the game, when the child is offered a piece of food from a completely harmless creature called a gnome, instead of taking the good piece of food, the child just commits cannibalism and eats it. And yes, it is technically cannibalism because in the DLC, there's a complicated piece of lore revealing that the children are really cursed to become gnomes, so that gnomes are actually children. Either way, it's not right to just eat things out of malicious intent, which I probably don't have to clarify anyway, because I'm assuming you don't just pick up random malevolent creatures and eat them alive. But nonetheless, I think it's pretty easy to call this child evil. And in fact, in the ending scene of this game, after Six killed the geisha, which is basically the ruler of the maw that I was too lazy to cover, she gains the powers from it, and this allows her to, in the final scene of the game, walk through the dining hall and simply kill every single creature that comes at her. No longer is there any struggle or a 20-minute part of the game of avoiding and sneaking. No, you just kill all of these things, drop them dead to their feet. It's a very stark contrast from the rest of the game, which is this kind of fear-driven escape, get away from these monsters, they'll kill you the moment they touch you. Now, you just walk through and drop a couple hundred of them. It's very, very different from the entire rest of the game. Ultimately, I'm not incredibly knowledgeable in this game. I don't know every inch of the lore. I'm not entirely sure what the ending means, but that wasn't really the purpose of this video. It was more to bring this game that I watched as a kid, and while it scared me, very much intrigued me, bring this game to a different audience. I'm sure there's a lot of people watching this video who are going, why did you just yap for 7.5 minutes about this game that came out in 2016? And to answer your question, I don't really know. This is a very spontaneous video. It's not my usual video, but it was fun to make, and I enjoyed it. This game, I feel there's probably a lot of people who have seen it, but there's probably some who haven't. And if I at least bring this game's attention to one person who hasn't heard of it before and they decide to try it out, then I'm happy. Because this is truly a very, very good experience. Even though I've never played it, but I can say from what I've watched of it, from what I've seen of it, the art style, there's just a lot that complements this game very, very well. Just coming together into this nice short little package. And I intend to check out this game at some point. I have $4 in my bank account. There's a lot more creatures I could talk about in this game, and there's even a whole entire sequel and a third one coming out this year, but I got lazy. I didn't want to make a very long video, so I figured I'd make a nice short little project. I enjoyed making this a lot, and if this does well enough, which is not a very high criteria, my channel gets 200 views per video, then I might make a sequel, maybe on the second game, and maybe I'll actually play the third game. Anyways, this video is over. Go check out the game yourself.